I thank you very much for tuning into That Will Nevr Work podcast. So our guest today, he didn't learn how to scale a business from a textbook. He learned it from years in the field, from inside of a family-run company that was growing in revenue but maybe shrinking in freedom, and from the hard truth that the smartest thing he ever did wasn't working harder, but it was making himself unnecessary. So today, our co-founder, CEO of TD Pine Advisors, Brandon, helps founder-led businesses do the one thing that separates a job from a legacy: build something that grows, runs, and creates real value with or without you sitting in the room. Let's talk about it right after this.
Educate, empower, enable, impact. Thank you for tuning in to That Will Nevr Work, an award-winning podcast where we share inspiring information and personal experiences related to business and the entrepreneurial journey from those who are leaders in their respective field. Now, here's your host, author and business coach, Maurice.
So, of course, you know that his information will be in the show notes. So if you want to read his whole bio, feel free to do that. Also, be sure to look him up on YouTube, LinkedIn, find all his content. Of course, we will talk about that a little bit later in the show, but you can find it. And great information, great stories. So I'll give you a snippet of his bio. He's systems-minded, strategic, practical. He's a builder. Clarity, results-driven, relationship-first, and operator. So if you know what any of those things mean, if you have any idea what that might look like and feel like, I challenge you to go and talk to Brandon on LinkedIn and type in any of those words and just say you heard it from Maurice. So, but I thank y'all very much for listening today. And Brandon, thank you very much for coming on to the show.
Maurice, thanks for having me.
Sure, no problem. So, Brandon, there's a moment that every founder hits, and I think, and a lot of people, especially in our audience right now, where they realize that the harder that they work, the more trapped they may feel. They might also feel like revenue is going up and stress is going up as well, and freedom is going absolutely nowhere. So what is actually happening to a business when it reaches that point, and why does working harder make it worse instead of better?
Yeah, so many great things to unpack in that one question. So I'll give you. How about I give you a story of just where I was when I realized I needed help. And frankly, I didn't realize this myself. I had a CNC operator that saw how stressed I was, and he was like, "This isn't sustainable, right?" So he gave me the resume of a plant manager that had gotten laid off during COVID, and he said, "You should talk to this guy." So to paint the picture, we had actually done fairly well during COVID. COVID was our second best year. We dropped maybe about 4% in sales. And the reason why is because the 5 years prior, we had taken an oil and gas downturn as an opportunity and started diversifying. So we started going into different verticals, and we started getting into food and beverage, medical, power generation. And so now we're looking at 2021-ish. COVID is starting to get kind of in our rearview mirror, and oil and gas is starting to come back. It's coming off the negative $30 a barrel, which nobody was buying anything oil and gas related at that point. And so, but now we're starting to come off of that, and all those essential businesses are still a big part of our portfolio now, right? Because we took that time to lay out that groundwork. And so now I'm working 80-hour work weeks, trying to manage what's going on from the customer side, what's going on from the operations side. How do we make sure that this order is going to ship on time? How are we going to make sure that we're making payroll? How are we, so all of these things are just going on. And my wife is starting to kind of put pressure on me. She's like, "Why did you take a 50% pay cut to go do the family business, right? Was that really a smart decision?" And so I'm juggling all of this. And like I said, my CNC operator gave me this resume. And just during that first interview, I was like, wow, like you can replace me He had been dealing with much larger businesses, much larger problems, and we're hovering around a little over $2 million a year in revenue. So we weren't, we weren't like a startup or whatever, but we had kind of gotten through that, what's next type of phase, right? And I was like, wow, like I said, you can replace me, and so that was the mindset that I had, is that I did. I hired him to replace me. You fight the fires. You handle operations. You make sure that order is going to ship. You make sure that the employees are taken care of, and I'm going to focus strategically on where the business is going. We grew 60% organically that first year that we hired him, because that was exactly how we separated, right? It's elevate and delegate. How do you position yourself as that next seat? And so many business owners don't think that way. So many business owners think that nobody else is going to take care of their baby the way that they would, and they can't build that trust enough to trust somebody that has the experience. Yes, they're not going to run the business like you do.
Right.
Absolutely not going to. So how do you set the guardrails so that you don't lose the values that you want in your business? And the mission is all aligned. But those are the tough conversations that you got to have, or you're just going to be in that glass ceiling, never been able to break through.
So I want people to hear something that Brandon mentioned, and I think we kind of missed this part. Because you said something about you were able to sit down and think strategically, right? Now what I'm getting at is that, yes, you could have done all the work. But one question that we don't really ask ourselves, what are our strengths? Because maybe in those places our weaknesses are highlighted, right? Because we're not getting up to the next level. And so did you ever have that conversation like, you know what, yes, I can do the day-to-day, I can manage all these people, but do I really understand my strengths and how to help this business?
Yeah. So, and it's funny, right? I don't know what you would say, classically trained, right? I have an MBA. I have an engineering background. So like, it's one thing to sit in a classroom and say, oh, you need to do a SWOT analysis, right?
Right.
And how do you look at your strengths and your weaknesses and your opportunities and your threats and all of that good stuff? It's another thing entirely to be running a business and say, I don't have time for that, right? I got to make sure that this order's in a ship, right? And so that balance is always a difficult conversation, right? And there's so many people in this space that will sit there and tell a business owner, oh, you need to stop everything that you're doing and you need to do that SWOT analysis. Is it important? Absolutely. But so is making payroll, right? Right. And so like, that's why I am such a huge advocate of having advisors, having people that you can trust, help you with these things, because you still got to do the day-to-day. Like until you find somebody else that, in our case, that was just what I was able to offload. I found I'm very opportunistic, right? I mean, I will change a plan like this if I find an opportunity that is aligned with a better way, right? And so in this instance, right, I found somebody who could handle operations and allow me to do that strategic. And once I'm starting to do that strategic, then I'm starting to look at, what verticals should we get into? What's going to be the resistance in getting into these? Who's the big competitors? How are we going to, our message is going to be different than theirs? And so from a strategy standpoint, it gives you so much more freedom when you're not worrying about this fire, or when that fire pops up, it's not your phone that rings, it's somebody else's phone that rings.
Right.
And so, yes, you absolutely need to be thinking about that. But at the same time, I fully understand that, like, when you're in that seat, it is so difficult to prioritize which fire to fight, right? There's 10 of them, right? So if I'm gonna fight this one, and while these other 9 fires are burning, or do I just go grab a bucket, right? And so, like, and again, I'll go back to the advisor thing. Like, you got to have people in your corner. Like, the only way to get through that next step is to have people who know, who have lived that life, who understand what it is and can help you package it up into that next stepping stone.
And see, I brought it up because as you stated, sometimes as founders, we're so emotionally attached, and that we get, as you said, we get so caught up, and and then the other part of that, as you said as well, we're working 80 hours a week, and so let's be honest, if it's a strength of ours, we're probably that might be only 2 hours because it is a strength, right?
Right.
The other 78 hours is probably our weakness or something that we're deficient in or whatever it is. And so now you're bringing in someone that, as you say, hey, you know what? They could do this job. And so that allows you some freedom. And a lot of times we don't like that. We don't want to give up the power. As you said, we're emotionally attached. But sometimes we're just not being honest with ourselves. Yeah. What is our true capability and capacity to really move forward? And so now these things that you're talking about of being the visionary of the company, of making sure maybe even the company stays true to its mission and its values, all those type of things that the leader has to showcase. And so for you, what was that like for you when you finally, to some degree, found some freedom and probably even giving some little more time to your little ladies?
Yeah, right. Yeah, I got 2 little girls. At the time of this was going on, like my first was born 2 weeks before Harris County. So we were in Houston, locked down for COVID, right? So like everybody shut down, right? And so, I'm at this time, right, running a business remotely, while also having an infant in the house. And my wife was also working remotely. It was challenging nonetheless. But and just imagine, right? Our sales weren't just dropping. This is like static, right? And so there's 2 like major things that I wanted to unpack and what your kind of statement was there was that, first of all, I think that pride has to get outside of most business owners. I'm going to call it for what it is, because so many business owners think that, like I said, I can't bring in anybody else and I can't admit to what my weaknesses are, just like what you were saying. Well, once you get past that and you realize, man, I am not the only one who's struggling running a business. And man, I am not the only one that has tried to figure out, how do I get new leads? Right. And how do I make sure that how we're presenting ourselves is the best of our ability? All of those things are struggles that every business owner goes through. Right. And so many business owners feel like they have such a unique business that they can't talk to anybody else. And it just doesn't work that way. And so, I was, yes, I was very reluctant to admit that I had a problem, right? I was young. I was essentially running a business at 30, early 30s, right? And so I can conquer the world and I can fix everything, right? And then realize that that's not the case. Eventually, I got to say, okay, this is my strengths and my weaknesses are here. Right. I need to find somebody who's going to plug that gap. Because the weaknesses still need gets taken care of. It's not like I can just bury my head in the sand and say, if I just try harder, it's going to fix. Like you said, you spend 78 hours on the weakness. So find somebody else that can fix that faster than you. But it's pride. Pride gets in our way, right? Right. The other thing that you mentioned is about, like our baby, right? And, I mentioned it. You mentioned it. There's so much analogy around a business being the founder's baby, and so many parallels to the daughters that I'm raising. Right. But with that being said, and I'm sure you've heard the analogy, right? Especially in this space, you don't want to tell somebody that their baby's ugly, right? I've heard that so much, and you hear that from brokers, and you hear that from other people. And look, you can't fix ugly, right? But you can fix maturity. And so that's what my thought is a business that is still dependent on the owner is just not mature yet. So how do we make it mature? And that is just like my daughters, right? I'm going to expose them to other ideas. I'm going to, within boundaries, bring them to situations that are outside of me, because eventually they are going to need to make decisions that are outside of me. Right. They need to learn their own way. And there's a structured way of doing that. Right. But it's the same thing in business. is that if everything still depends on the founder, then look, it's just not, it's an infancy, right? It's still an infancy. So how do we get it to be an adolescent? How do we get it to be an adult?
Right.
And it's removing that dependency. That's the key. That's the key.
Now, so a part of your background, again, you're coming from a family-run business. And so, unfortunately, there's another level to the baby, right? There's another level that you're fighting with, and the idea is legacy, right? You're fighting that, you're wrestling with that, whatever that is. So how much of that also contributes to our maybe not feeling worthy, right? Because we're running someone else's idea. Maybe we're not really working in our strength because we're trying to fit in the other holes in those situations. So how do you think that word legacy hinders us and works against us in that place of stress?
Well, I'll just tell you my story, and then we'll see how that shakes out, right? So my grandfather, he started the business in 1980, right? And so by 2014, I felt confident enough. Okay, I've been in engineering. I've been in what a potential customer's life and shoes looks like. I've been in oil and gas consulting and done project management and all of that stuff, right? And so by this point, I'd finished my MBA and kind of lived that side of my career. And I was like, you know what? I'm done with all of that. I'm ready to come into the business, right? And so, when I called my grandfather up, I was like, okay, you've talked to me, because I grew up with my grandfather. I had such a great relationship with my grandfather. Did we see eye to eye on everything? No, it's just, that's family, right? I mean, but since I was in 5th grade, I grew up in that household, right? And then I went off to college, and then I went off and did my own thing, and now I'm calling him up, and I was like, every time that we talk, you talk about how you're chained to the business, right? Customers are calling you, the employees are coming to you. We had family in the business, but you didn't have the confidence that you could retire. So let's talk through this, right? And so that's what we did. I joined the family business. I took the 50% pay cut and said, hey, the day I came back from my honeymoon, I started with the family business, right? So let's make all the transitions at the same time. So one of the key portions of going into that family business, my grandfather said, it's not me that's here, right? It's the rest of the family. So you need to talk to your mom, you need to talk to your uncle, you need to talk to your brother, right? So I had those conversations that, look, I'm not coming here to work in the business. I'm coming here to grow the business. Those are two different mindsets.
Right.
That means we're going to be doing things differently. That means that we're going to be failing, because you got to break some eggs to be able to make an omelet. Like,
right.
you really got to push the boundaries, because what got you here isn't going to get you where you want to go. Like, those are two very different things. And look, frankly, even in the early years, right, my grandfather and I did not see eye to eye, because we're making changes. We're doing things differently, right? I did my best to keep the major portions of what he would want to see in that new business, which is customer centric. We were very customer centric. We made sure that customers were taken care of, and employee centric. Our employees were I felt treated very well, and it seemed like people wanted to be in that atmosphere. And so from that perspective, I mean, we scaled. I mean, we bought 2 businesses. We bought a competitor. We bought a supplier, which were both fire sales, because business owner did not do the things that needed to happen, and the families were left picking up the pieces and that kind of stuff. So we were at this point, right? We're scaling organically, and we're scaling through M&A, we're dealing with all kinds of fires that we'd never had to deal with before in the old way. It was a very difficult time when you're in that transition phase. Transition phase are always difficult, and you have to know that going in. And I felt like I had that conversation with family strong enough that, hey, this is going to get difficult before it gets easier. And we need to get through this hump to get to where we're trying to go. I found out that I did not have that conversation well enough. Hindsight is 20/20.
Right, of course.
So 2 months after my grandfather passed away, I get a message from the attorney that said that the resolution letter that gave me the authority to raise the debt, to hire and fire, to buy businesses, was null and void when he passed away.
Oh wow!
And so it was one of those things that hits you with a semi truck.
Right.
I mean, if we're not aligned on what we need to be doing, then obviously I'm no longer the leader that needs to be taking this ship where it's going.
Right.
And so I resigned. And there's so much that you can look back and say, man, I wish I would have done this, or I wish I would have done that, or if I would have done this different, but we only get one chance, right? You never get that chance to do it a different way.
Right.
And so, I guarantee you that my grandfather didn't want what happened to happen.
Right. Of course.
Because it wasn't just the business. It was the family. It was the dynamic that we're still trying to put back together and still trying to navigate. Right. Because there's things that are said that can't be unsaid.
Right.
There's things that are done that can't be undone. And trust me, I am not putting all of that blame on everybody else. Right. I did so many things that I wish I could have taken back.
Right.
Because my focus was growing the business.
Right.
Grow the business. Because frankly, we had mouths to feed. We had, and how do you feed those mouths? You got to get a bigger business. And I wish I would have done it a different way. I think that there still would have been ways to be successful while making sure that the family is included in that growth. But we grew 4x. I mean, we grew. It was a very, very hard growth. And it's one of those things that, hindsight is 20/20.
So even though you grew physically with the company, right? But there were other parts of you that grew as well, right? Internally, your, again, self-worth, your ideas, how you feel like, you can move forward just in life. How do you become a better parent, a better husband? It's so many other pieces that grows with that as well. Because now you start to see, hey, you know what? I can be stronger in my communication. I can be stronger in, whatever other attributes and characteristics and all those type of things. But a lot of times while we're in the moment, right, we don't know what T's to cross. We don't know what I's to dot, because we're in the moment, and or those people that are around us, we really think that they love us, right? And so when we talk about the family, we think that they love us, but you also said something else. You were employee centric. The employees feel like they love us, right? The vendors feel like they love us as well. And sometimes we like the love, but we can get lost in that love and not understanding what's really going on behind the scenes.
Absolutely. And I love how you put it about the growth. And then also you mentioned about while you're in the moment, it's hard to see that because frankly, okay, when I hired the COO, it freed up more time.
Right.
Right. So now he can fight the fires and I can focus on what I do well.
Right.
So what do you do with the time? You start doing more of what you do well. You just do more of that, just amped up, right?
Right.
And so like in all of that moment, I wasn't looking at self-betterment, right? I wasn't looking at, how can I improve myself because my family needs me, right? At this point, I have a little baby girl. My wife needs me. My wife is wearing a lot of weight on her shoulders because she's raising the daughter as well as she has a corporate life, right? And so, in my mind, I'm like, okay, I'm growing this business, And so, like I said, whenever you free up time, you just use that time to do more of whatever you believe is the best value add for the business.
Right.
It wasn't until I lost the identity. Right. Now, like, I remember resigning and Now it's like, well, now what? Like for 10 years, this has been my life.
Right.
And so, and every decision that I was making was, how is it going to impact a business? It's do we have the ability to go on vacation? Because right now we got this major order and I don't think it's going to be able to ship out if I'm not there babysitting it. Right.
Right.
I'm sorry. I know that we're on lockdown, but we're essential business, and I need to be there to make sure that we got power right now because of power outage. We had a power outage. We had storms that were coming through, right?
Right.
And so, like, I was always heading there to go take care of those things, and my family suffered from that. My household suffered from that.
Right.
And so it wasn't until after losing the identity that, something's got to change. Like, if I know how I am, I can be very passionate about things to a fault, right? And a lot of people say that, you got to tone it down. I say, well, why, right? Why do I got to tone it down? If that's my strength,
right.
Let me do it, right? And so, like, I remember, immediately I reached out to some people that I would consider mentors, and I said, hey, I'm going through some things. So I resigned on a Friday, and on Sunday I'm meeting a mentor at Costco to have hot dogs, right? Because now I'm on a budget.
Right.
I don't have, and so it was that was life changing. He told me, hey, you need to try F3. I said, what's F3? And he said, just go, just show up. Don't worry about it. Fitness, fellowship, and faith is what F3 stands for. And Monday morning at 5:30 a.m., there was a workout group, because that's what it is. It's primarily a workout group, but it's a leadership group in disguise. I showed up. It's free. It's always outdoors, even when it's -9 degrees outside. It's always outdoors. And so showed up that next day, Monday morning at 5:30, completely changed my life. Completely. Because now I'm focusing on mental health. I'm focusing on the physical health. I'm focusing on being a better dad. I'm focusing, and those are all of the concepts that are talked about in that group, right?
Right.
And so that transformed me, and it gave me that time to take all of those lessons from back then, right? That you don't think about because you're in the moment,
right?
And then you're starting to piece together that, okay, moving forward, this is how I'm going to communicate. This is how I'm going to make sure that my relationships are strong. This is how I'm going to make sure that I'm going to be there for my family. I know that I'm eventually going to jump into something.
Right.
I'm at the time I was 38, right?
Okay.
And I was not able to retire, right?
Right.
Right. And so it's like, okay, well, I mean, I know that I'm going to jump into something, but I need to focus on, something first, right? And so I did. I focused on me for about 4 months, and then I realized, okay, I'm ready to start a consulting business and try to help owners before it's too late.
Right.
Right. Like I said, the 2 fire sales that we had were, dealing with the kids. The kids weren't in the business, but they wanted to get something out of it, right? And frankly, the best they could do was liquidate everything, right? Sell all the machines, sell the building, all of that stuff, right? We just happened to be a strategic in that place. So we could, buy the book of business and start, manufacturing the next day, right? And so, when you have a job and you don't have an asset, there's no option.
Right.
There's no option for you. Nobody's going to buy your job.
Right.
And so many owners don't look at it that way. They're like, I've been here for 30 years. Obviously, I'm making money. Nobody cares.
Right.
They can go buy an easier job somewhere else. And so that's what we're trying to help owners understand, is that you have to get in a completely different mindset. And just because you had a successful business or have a successful business, that's a snapshot in time. You have no clue what's going to happen next year or the year after.
Right.
How do you make it a significant business? There's a difference between successful and significant. And significant is what's going to outlast the owner. It's going to be what transcends them. It's that legacy that you were talking about.
Right.
It's that next phase when you're no longer there answering the phones and doing the things. There's always a season in business. I'm not discounting that one bit. There is a season where you got to roll up the sleeves and you got to make it happen. But at some point, you have to transition out of that. I've seen what happens when you have to close the doors because there was no mind shift change. Somebody dies unexpectedly.
Right.
Business partners, that was it the death, divorce, anything can cause problems in the business. And
right.
you have to be thinking strategically about, if I'm not able to come tomorrow, how can I make sure that this business still runs?
So while you're on that roll, Brandon, I would like for you to tell everybody where they can find your information and your company. Since you gave so much, you already gave the gist of it. So can you let everybody know what you do?
Yeah. So TD Pine Advisors. So originally, like I said, I started a consulting business after going through figuring out my identity shift, right? And then about 4 months into that, I met my partner. My partner spent time in investment banking, then he was private equity, and then 2,500 employee business CFO, right? So he has high finance covered, right? And so I think that's what's unique about us is that we have the operations understanding and the finance understanding. And so we want to help business owner in that transformation or in that transition. And we want to sit with business owner and say, okay, what are the problems that we're fixing today that's going to get you where you want to be 5 years from now? And a lot of times what we do is we do a baseline valuation. He's a CFA, so he chartered financial analyst. So he will handle the valuation, and we'll say, okay, if that's not the number that you want today, if it's the number you want today, let's go to market. Let's get it out there and let's make it happen, right? But if it's not the number that you want today, then how do we close that gap? Because you obviously have a number in your head, and everything is possible. It's just how much hard work do you want to put into it, and how much help are you willing to get for it, right? Because like again, what we said earlier, what got you here isn't going to get you where you want to go. And so that's our focus, is that closing that gap between whatever that value is that the owner wants and whatever the value is that the business is today. And we can work with however long the horizon is. We can work with however large the gap is. But we need to roll up our sleeves and we need to start getting after some things. And because we have to be proactive about it. We can't be reactive and let the world happen to us.
So, unfortunately, Brandon, like we could go over a whole hour because there's a whole lot that you just said there. Because there's a lot of parts to that. Trust, right? Yep. As you talk about emotional, because the emotion is involved, it's like trying to sell a house. We've developed this house and we built it from the ground up. And it's funny because I just saw a video on YouTube that talked about Deion Sanders and a house that he built down there in Texas. I think it was Texas. And he couldn't sell it. He could not sell it because he built it directly for him, his taste, and all that type of stuff. And so even though he no longer lived in that house, he was 2 houses removed. And he still couldn't sell it. So they had to foreclose on it, liquidate it, all that other type of stuff. And so it's funny that you're talking about this because a lot of times we build it, again, to our taste in the moment, not with the end in mind. And so that was one thing I had wanted to say. The other thing I wanted to say, and this is just, my mind goes crazy sometimes, but you had mentioned about how your wife was raising your daughter at that time. But in my mind, I was like, I remember times when my wife might have been raising our kids and raising me at the same time. So
Great point. I didn't want to say that, but we were all thinking it.
But Brandon, man, I thank you very much for coming on to the show.
Man, I appreciate it. It's been a pleasure, Maurice. This is great.
No problem. But I got to ask you the question, Brandon. Would you rather question? So, Brandon, would you rather choose 3 doors or a fork in the road?
Fork in the road, for sure.
Any particular reason why?
because I mean, in business, that's what we're dealing with, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you want the three doors, you're on a game show, right? But the fork in the road, that is always as a business owner, right? Every morning that I wake up, do I continue to do the same thing, or do I go do something different, right? You're always dealing with the fork in the road, and all you can do is use the data that you have, that you've had access to make a decision, right? Am I going to do something differently, or am I going to keep on doing the same thing, right? Every day that I continue to do the same thing, it's still a decision that you're making.
Right.
So you're constantly dealing, and so that's just my simple mind from my past life is the fork in the road for sure.
Oh no, and I totally get it. I understand it. But as I said to you in the green room, I've heard multiple responses. The doors were glass; they could see through them. The doors were already open. Just this year, someone said that it's a third option in that fork in the road. It's straight. I'm not going over. I'm just going to go straight ahead. I'm going to split the difference, But I appreciate you coming on. And I appreciate your answer as well.
Yeah, awesome. This is great, Maurice.
Thank you very much. And of course, y'all, I thank you very much for listening to That Will Nevr Work podcast. But of course, I need to give you a challenge. I want you to take a 30-day test. This week, ask yourself one honest question. If you step completely away from your business for 30 days, what would the break look like? How would it feel? Mm-hmm. Write down every single thing. Don't judge the list. Just let it be true and as honest as possible. Because that list isn't a list of your strengths. It's a list of your single points of failure, possibly. And every item on it is a system, a hire, or a process that your business is waiting for you to build. The gap between your current list and an empty list is the gap between a job and a business. I thank you very much for listening today. And of course, look up Brandon's information. And I'll talk to y'all just a little bit later.
Thanks for listening. Follow Maurice Chisholm on social media to stay connected and check back weekly for new episodes. Until next time, that will never work. Or will it?